So the reason why we call this a myth, and I'd like to begin with a graphical representation. This is the story that we are talking about is already known. It's been written about. Essentially what has happened is WhatsApp and their parent company Facebook has decided to sue a company called NSO. They feel that they have tried to spy upon and also use the devices to compromise WhatsApp conversations of 1,400 accounts. They've gone to court, they've moved court. They feel that these people are in 20 countries from UAE to Bahrain to Mexico. We don't know whether there are Indians involved or not. There are journalists, diplomats, senior government officials. Essentially, WhatsApp is telling, it's a private Israeli firm called NSO, which is in the dock. NSO has said no, they have refuted all these allegations. How is it done? Spies break into the phone, use video call features to send malware. So this process is on and on. It's all over the internet, it's being spoken about. My point over here is different. The fact that WhatsApp presented itself as an absolutely secure platform where privacy was paramount, where they fought with governments that we will not allow you data, where there is end-to-end encryption. Well, you can encrypt an app from end to end. But what do you do if the phone itself is hacked? Then from the source itself, you have information. So what do you do? Is security in this digital age simply a myth? I mean, I'll give you an example, and there's one more graphic that we'll put out on screen before we start a small discussion. You've got a situation where on the internet, you can pay a small fees against a charge. You can download an app, and there are services that provide spying facility. You can hack into any phone. These are some of the apps, spy apps. They claim that they can track calls, texts, WhatsApp video, location history, emails. This is to ensure employees use company-owned devices responsibly. But see, the point is, there is a bona fide way of using the software, and there is a malified way of using the software. Spy inspector also, I mean, you can spy into any phone that you want. So there is a misuse possibility also. So is safety a myth in this digital age? I'm asking a very fundamental question because that is what came to my mind. Let me introduce my guest this evening. Apar Gupta is a senior advocate. I've got Jitin Jain, who's a cyber expert, as well as Karnika Seth, a cyber lawyer, as well as an expert. Thank you very much to the three of you. Let me begin with you, Jitin. Have I oversimplified the problem, or am I stating a fact when I say that security is essentially a myth?
You see, security is always a myth. Nothing is 100% secure, and all these claims by WhatsApp that we are a 100% end-to-end encrypted secure application, we cannot provide any backdoors. This is a statement for the day. What holds in future and tomorrow, even WhatsApp does not know. And this entire end-to-end encryption business, as you rightly said, this all encryption is in transit. When the data is in transit, at the source itself, at the both sides, there is no encryption. So if the device itself is compromised, which happened in the case of this Pegasus software by NSO, encryption cannot save you, because your device itself, source itself is being compromised. And this is where, this entire case by Facebook is throwing so many questions. At the onset, it looks that, Facebook is pursuing this, unethical guys who are surveilling upon human rights activists, journalists, and they should be thrown behind bars. But it's not a simple case. If you read the petition very carefully, it is more of a PR stunt. It raises more questions than it answers many things.
Show that they're the victims.
Number one, the petition is suing the company which has developed a technologically surveillance tool. Now, the majority of the customers, or maybe most of the customers,
these apps that I showed.
No. Most of these are apps which are offered to anyone and anyone. Most of the customers, what Facebook is claiming and NSO is claiming, they are the states and governments of NSO tools. Now, governments of any state, they are the bona fide users, they are not the malified users. The law which authorize any interception are always those national and domestic laws.
Okay.
US cannot decide what is the law for interception in India and what is the law for interception in America.
Okay.
Number two, if you look at the entire petition of Facebook, they are suing a company which has developed a tool and they're silent about the person who has actually used the tool to spy on journalists. So what is the intention? You are not naming the Saudi government, you are not naming others, because you very well know that you cannot sue the governments out the jurisdictions because they are the bona fide user. Number two, they are seeking damages.
I'll come back to you.
Damages.
Let me introduce Apar Gupta also. Apar, what do you have to say to this? I mean,
so I'm the
would you agree with Jiten?
So there are some points of disagreement. I'm actually the executive director at the Internet Freedom Foundation, and I also do practice law. And we've been working on surveillance reform at a very granular level. And what we've noticed is that states are not only now interested in surveilling what you're already putting out, they are also procuring technologies increasingly, which is called malware, which is injected into our devices to actually surveil us actively above and beyond the existing surveillance capabilities which are there. For instance, the Pegasus software suite which is there could be activated remotely by giving a missed call on your WhatsApp number, and thereafter your audio phone could be switched on. The software was procured by various governments, and WhatsApp actually contracted, or it engaged the Citizen Lab, which is based out of the Monk School in Canada, and it has done studies, specifically country by country reports. I hope that India does not figure in that list in future. But it does raise troubling questions on 3 levels. The first is legal. Are there any laws and norms which are prohibiting the procurement of malware technologies by government? No, and we need it urgently. 2, technicality. Are technical tools and vulnerabilities as they are discovered in systems, is there a responsibility by cyber security experts to report it responsibility? No. Again, this goes back to the first. We do need it. And this is a developing conversation. Third, and most finally I'd like to put across, is civic education. Of course, no lock is completely safe. The 7 lever can be cracked, the 9 lever can be cracked, and so can encryption. It is a matter of will. But what we do need is a certain level of user education. It should not be a situation where we just leave our doors open because we resign ourselves to the fatalism that I can be spied upon. We do need locks, we do need norms, and we do need a better technical process.
Okay. Karnika Seth, let me come to you. You know, from where Apar left, that we do need these locks, we do need safety and security. But I ask you a fundamental question, and I think somewhere Apar mentioned this fact, that an intention to use these surveillance softwares can be bona fide, but can be malified as well. And because this is a business proposition, they may end up allowing. Who's at the receiving end? The user.
Correct. Yes. I think this incident opens up Pandora's box of questions, because it's not only to do with the law, what is hacking, for instance, whether it is CCTV or it is a device which is having a WhatsApp usage, or it could be use of any keyloggers to spy. There are n number of spywares and there are n number of technical loopholes in many applications which we are using today. So on one end, the liability aspect is important. Whether we have the law in the country that prohibits hacking, yes, we do. But on the other hand, how you have gathered a particular evidence in a court of law will not make the evidence gathered or collected as inadmissible. So the vicarious liability, or whether it is a primary liability, direct or indirect liability, all these concepts are intertwined. What is the liability of the platform? What is the liability of the user? Is he entitled to use it for ethical usage? Were there any terms and conditions legal as per the jurisdiction where this app was launched? Is it open for use for other users? Are some of the pertinent questions. And can WhatsApp shirk away responsibility of monitoring this particular platform which is being hacked? Has it done enough by only giving the encryption as a possibility?
And sadly,
a larger debate.
I'll not have a larger debate, and I'll have to maybe discuss this at some other point when we have more time. whether this episode throws open more questions than answers. This is not a solution. Very quickly, 10 seconds.
Why did not Facebook and WhatsApp sue Cambridge Analytica? They also collected data unauthorized in an unauthorized manner. Second, this is not a case of having a bona fide user or a malified user. This is a case of bona fide user running bona fide things and a bona fide user running malified campaign, and that can only be decided in the national courts of that particular country, not in the American courts.
So this matter has gone to the courts. Now we'll have to see what
happens. It's an American trick to ensure that the surveillance power remains with US and no other country in the world have a technological interception capacity where they don't have to beg to US.
Jiten Jain's what should I say, conspiracy theory. We'll talk about all this and a lot more, and Karnika Seth in a future broadcast. Thank you so much for joining on NDTV.